Everyone I talk to, anyone who will stand still and listen, I tell them, by all means, bring the kids to this thing. This works on all these different levels.
It does.
And that's, I think, the true success of this film.
In the 1970s, the first Black Panther series was being done. There weren't, obviously, a lot of black characters. Pop culture was not where it is now, as you guys are doing this film. I wish we had the backing in terms of people believing in the project. They felt they were giving me a book that was going to die. The Black Panther wasn't an important character, but the reason that we got to do what we did was because they didn't have time to read those books. They caught on to it, I think, about 3, 4 issues in, and then say, hey, wait a minute, but it was too late.
Right.
It's already a novel, and then I could do it.
What made it unique was just the idea at the time. Not only was this a black superhero, and it was kind of a shock when he pulls off his mask and reveals himself to be an African king, but he's also rich, very smart, the king of a kingdom, and he single-handedly defeats Marvel's premier family group, the Fantastic Four. And this was all being done and delivered to a largely white and male audience at the time. So it was kind of a shockwave, in a sense, and delivered at a time of civil unrest during the growth of the civil rights movement. And it just showed what a progressive thinker Stan was and still is to this day.
Were fans aware of how unique he was? Was there sort of the wonder of discovery of this guy?
There's been very few stories with the Panther in Wakanda, and normally there would be a bunch of the Fantastic Four would be in there. There had to be a villain. So you really didn't explore too much. I don't know how many stories were done, but if there was half a dozen, that would be a lot.
To have a character like that was highly unusual even in the 70s. So it's not even simply revolutionary for comics. I mean, it's revolutionary in a pop cultural sort of way. And in that sense, it's sort of appropriate that it would continue to be revolutionary in the form of this film.
It was a continual battle that never been done before. So there was a lot of, people trying to get used to the idea that we're even doing anything like that. For instance, if they were a little bit afraid of a black villain on the covers, I would try to tell them every character in the book is black. Whether it's the hero, it's the villains, it's the men, it's the women.
Well, I think also what's different, Stan just woke up one morning and said, I'm going to do this. And it was a purely creative, fun decision. At the time that the torch was passed from Don to me, I had a great number of considerations about how I would approach the character, make it relevant, and how I would introduce or reintroduce this character into a genre that caters mostly to a white male audience. So there was a lot of calculation about how best to introduce T'Challa to that audience and update Don's version of it. I kind of prefer the purely creative avenue, but I don't know that exists anymore.
I suspect, I don't know, but I suspect there were quite a bit of eyes on this project. And to produce something which for my money is so original, that's their Panther. That's their Panther. And so I think to have all of those eyes, I have no idea what you guys, we're dealing with creating it.
I mean, Ryan, you've said this before, how surprised you were how small the team is at Marvel. That it's not this giant corporation, that lawyers aren't reading scripts because they don't. It really is a handful of people really that weigh in on the creative decisions, and it was the story they pitched that was interesting. The character you guys created and all had a hand in, combined with the ideas that they brought to the table, were what was compelling. Without those ideas, we wouldn't have done the film, but it was something that became undeniable, and we had to do the movie. Right. And that's a good way to make a film, when everybody's signing off on it for the right reasons.
They're not new ideas. I think all of you have tackled those in different iterations along the way, and it wasn't just me and him. We talked to Nate about ideas. It's an entire group of people kind of pouring their heart into it, right, and trying to find the best version. And Ryan led the way. We were all working in our capacity to bring the vision that he had for the movie.
You guys did a beautiful job. Yeah. You really did.
Yeah.
So I like to start movies out, projects out with like a question that I need to try to find an answer to. You know, one was the concept of what does it mean to be African? You know, and like one of the first things I said to Ned, I was like, yo, I gotta go to the continent. You know, because I haven't been yet. I had a feeling that, you know, in trying to ground Wakanda in the real world, the same way that the MCU is grounded in the real world and a lot of your other stories, you know, I would need to kind of get there, you know what I mean, to see it for myself. But I was also interested in this idea, which has been explored in the comics, if Wakanda existed, you know, if somebody told me, hey, yo, Wakanda's been here this whole time,
Right.
how would that make me feel?
Like
know?
Killmonger.
Yeah, you know, it's just that idea of wait, so this place has been there, but all of these things have been happening, you know, and nothing's been done about it. You know, that's a conflict that becomes very interesting. So the other thing we got into was this idea of am I my brother's keeper? You know, which is the question, you know, or do you even see people as your brother? You know what I mean? Like if you know, in this idea of self-preservation and what that means for people who are born outside of those lines. So they got a litany of stuff that we found to be relevant to the time, you know, colonization, borders, identity, the idea and the culture of the African American versus, you know, existing in direct conflict with the culture of the African. So that's when we started to get into some rich stuff to mind. That's when we started to get exciting.
You went for the multi-levels of meaning. I always hoped, yeah, we're doing the first African character in all these iconic jungle genre kind of things, but then it's a hero's journey as well.
Right.
And Killmonger and T'Challa, you know, reflect different paths. And so it's like, how is he going to redeem himself as a king and as a human being?
Right.
And the self-doubts that we all have. And so part of me, that was, and that you guys went for that, didn't just go for the surface stuff. I thought it was marvelous, and Michael did a great job as Killmonger, you know, like, and by the way, just as a quick aside, Angela Bassett as a character I wrote, wow. I said, okay, I'm happy, I can die now, that's fine.
In that first act, when we had that first vision of Wakanda, I personally was not quite prepared for how moved I would be emotionally when I saw it. I really wasn't prepared for that, and it just kind of caught me off guard. You know, like, I defy anyone, particularly people of color, to get through the first act of Black Panther without just being overwhelmed by this vision, because you have now given us a model of not just what Africans can be, or even what African Americans could be, but what humanity could be if we just stopped our petty squabbles and started working together. If nothing else, you have given us this vision and given lots of little boys and little girls of all races this vision. And once you've given it, it can never be taken away, because that's going to stick with them the rest of their lives. And I thank you for that.
The genre of comics is beautiful in that way, in that, like, you know, it's somebody talked about it being like spokes on a wheel. You know what I mean? Like, you get your time and you add, and somebody else comes. You know, Reggie comes along and adds this character and this, you know, these concepts, and it's, you know, so you really kind of building. Man, like, I remember when they would give us the files digitally, and I'm like, yo, man, give it to me hard copy. You know what I'm saying? Like, just give me something so I can feel the weight of this. You know what I'm saying? I kind of wanted to, like, see the weight of all the work that have been put in, and flip through, you know, just flip through the pages, you know, and it was, you know, it was, shit, man, it was beautiful. You got this history where, for us, it was about not dropping the ball. Yeah. You know what I mean?
As someone who read these books since I was a kid, like, Wakanda was a character that I thought was just a big thing to explore.
I would always tell the colorists, and to be honest, first I was, it's always a Frank Frazetta moon. It's always a full moon. There's always clouds cutting through it. And then I would tell the colorists, it's never a pale yellow moon in Wakanda. It's always like blood red or orange or pink. But it's not, because I wanted it to be this otherworldly kind of place. It's kind of enchanted, like, wouldn't it be great to be in this place? Yeah. And it's unlike any other place we know. So that's exactly what we were hoping for.
Yeah, and for us, it was that, and how do we not make it too fantastic? Because we were really worried about not making Asgard, again, on Earth, which I think would have ruined the sort of suspension of disbelief of this could be a place that exists, you know? And so I know that was something you were passionate about too, like making it a tactile place. Yeah. You know, I remember one thing you kept saying a million times was, people need to eat. Like, as soon as I see somebody eating, I feel like that place exists because you never see people eating in these fake places, and it's true.
I made them completely sound absorbent.
Interesting.
Guess what I call them? Sneakers.
The idea that Shuri built these shoes that were inspired by Back to the Future was sort of that same idea, right? Like Wakandans also being aware of the outside world and pulling the things they like into it without adopting the culture of the outside world, but just saying, oh, that's cool, we should have that here.
When I first sat down with Nate and Kevin, it was one of those things where I was like, man, what do y'all think? Because I know they had been developing this character for a while, and it was like, man, we think he could be our James Bond. And I was like, huh? Somebody who's not white, you know what I mean? Because they've seen that so many times, but come in confident, who can handle any situation. I was like, man, I always love when I meet with people and they thought of something I couldn't think of on my own, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and he's surrounded by strong female characters.
And allowing them to all be dimensional was something that was really important, you know, to not have them feel monolithic, like they're placeholders, but like actual people. Right. They don't always agree. They're real human beings.
If you watch a lot of those scenes, you know, you'll see what it really is. The conflict is you got a traditionalist with an innovator.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, the reason the Q scene works with T'Challa and Shuri is because it's all, she's making fun of him for being old. You know what I'm saying? The whole time, like, your suit's old. Your shoes are old. You know what I'm saying? Like you know, you're trying to bring your old girlfriend on your new mission. Like, the whole time, she just poking fun at him, like, you know, you ancient, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Get with the new. You know what I mean? Like, and
it feels like a real family.
Yeah.
And even within a real family, there are divisions, there are different, you know, ideologies and so forth. But at the end of the day, you know, family is family.
Yes.
I think, Ryan, what you did, like in a lot of this, is you reached into the heart of some of the themes that, you know, I guess are not just African American, but a diaspora. So I think about like her pulling her wig off and throwing it at somebody, right? Like it's a combat move, right? But that comes out of there's something black about that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, something you would see in church or on the block or, you know what I'm saying?
It was like femininity, specifically black femininity.
Right.
And that's a specific thing. Like, that comes from a specific trauma.
Right. She's never comfortable with the wig.
She's not comfortable. And what I found is so complicated about being African in America. And this film kind of taught it to me, man. Like studying is the things that make us unique, the things that make us African, we've been taught to hate. So what you see is this woman who's a staunch traditionalist who has her rank tattooed on her head. You know what I'm saying? Her rank is everything to her. And she has to cover it up with this hair that's not her own. It was that contrast there. If you know anything about beauty, everybody wears wigs. You know what I'm saying? White women wear wigs and like—
I'm wearing one now, actually.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, you know, so it was like, what's the first thing she would do? Well, her cover's blown now. Right. So this thing's coming off.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And
I'm gonna show you who I am now.
Exactly.
The question you're talking about is that question of identity, though, and being proud of.
Right. How do you
like
go
Ryan
from the
was saying,
process?
we've been taught to hate
what
we are and not to have respect for it. And so I think, I think we try to approach it with the same dialogue between African American and African that exists, that is terrain that we try to explore.
This movie's been such a success, and it's so phenomenal. It's changing, breaking records, and audiences coming from all over to see it and all over the world. And hopefully it will change how Hollywood approaches doing diverse movies. But it's also at a time of extremism in America, where this extreme divisiveness, where you got people on this one side, and yet here comes in the Black Panther in the midst of this and just shatters every expectation. What do you guys think about that? How do you think that collision, that this thing is so big, so, you know, resonating with so many people worldwide?
I think the polarization is loud but overstated in a lot of people who are not heard, right? Like, one thing we always talked about, and we saw this in test screenings, was how well this movie does with young people. That's the people that aren't polled, that's the people that don't have voices on TV, on any channel particularly, who when they see the movie, they love it. And they embrace it, and they walk away with messages that I think are in there because you guys put them in there, but I didn't think would resonate in the same way that they do. So that the next time there is a potential for change, they go, well, I remember feeling a certain way about that movie because of what that movie was telling me. I have to stand up and be counted this time.
Were you surprised at how big the response has been?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, bro. Yes.
I would imagine.
Nobody saw this coming, man.
Nate, didn't they love him coming out of Civil War II? Wasn't Panther like?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a testing ground, frankly. We were like, well, let's see how he does. Let's see what
I
his
thought
response
that
is.
you had it then because you caught the motion, that acrobatic grace and poetry of the character, and Chadwick just had the right voice and then presence.
Well, it's all
I
in
thought-
his eyes. Chadwick does so much with his eyes.
Yeah. Well, and what was impressive is he was doing that work in Civil War in the context of this giant movie where there's 1 million characters. And frankly, he was really working off of what you guys had done in the books because we didn't have a script for Black Panther. So he was using the imagery from publishing as the inspiration for that character.
He would be the one person. If I'll put money on, not a lot of money, but I'll put a reasonable amount. You know what I'm saying? Like that if we call Chad and say, man, are you truly surprised? Like in your heart of hearts, Chad might tell you no. He knows how to make it real, and he knows how to go against what you expect.
And from all the great female characters we have to the villains,
Right.
whether it's Killmonger or Claw or even M'Baku, like they're all so big as personalities. It allows you to have contrast with Chad because his performance is going to pull you in, and they're coming after him every time.
But the added complexity is you created a villain who actually had a case. Because, it's like we want to root for the hero, but at the same time I'm going, but Michael really does have a point.
Yeah.
That was excellent.
First time I picked up a Black Panther comic book, I asked the dude, I said, man, and the comic book show, I'm like, hey, man, show me if there's any characters in here that got black people, like the book's about them. But he's like, yeah, I got Black Panther. And I'm like, and I see it, I'm like, man, this is dope. Like, tell me about him. He's just African king and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, man, that's not me. I couldn't relate to that. It felt like it was for me. Killmonger, being from Harlem and like maroon from there, he was a little closer of a way in, you know what I'm saying? Like from my perspective. This is before I traveled to the continent. This is before I really saw, oh yeah, I got as much ownership over T'Challa as anybody, you know what I'm saying? And I actually own both of them, you know what I'm saying? And I got both these characters living inside of me, you know what I'm saying? Like living inside. I think T'Challa and Killmonger live inside of every African American.
T'Challa and him end up at the same place kind of by the end, but for different, one out of
By
empathy.
different paths.
Yeah, by different paths.
Yeah.
So the idea that the idea that our hero gets affected by our villain is something that was important to try to achieve, and I think that helps with the kind of connection that people have to him. He's so pivotal to the movie.
It's beautiful.
I have the fortune or misfortune of writing Black Panther right now. And I saw that movie and it was like, back to the drawing board.
You've made the market even more viable for a more diverse set of artistic expression across cultural fields here.
And I think there are characters in the movie that people will find inspiration in and maybe try things that they didn't think they could do. I mean, you read a lot, especially about Shuri specifically.
Oh yeah, where's the Shuri cartoon? That's gotta be coming.
But that notion of, oh, science can be for me. Well, that's cool, because I've never seen a scientist who looked like me before. That's something I can aspire to, because this movie is to some degree about a nation that celebrates excellence. There is an inspiration there that I think kids especially are going to take away from the film, which is great. There's someday is going to be something very special that happens from the mind of somebody maybe who saw this film and was inspired. And that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when we see like Instagram posts and youngsters that have come out from watching the movie and are doing the kind of salute, or they got their mask on, you know what I mean? Next to they parent, it's like, oh man, like that's what it's all about. Like we doing our parts as artists, same way that y'all did y'all parts for us.
It had to be great, and it's a great film, and that should not be lost on my. It had to be great. If it sucked, it'd be no ants.
Yeah.
You'd be like, damn, man, what happened, Ryan? Damn, you let us down, dude. You can't even come back to the block like that, man. You know? But it was great. You can go to any Martin Luther now, man. You know? Any Martin Luther. That's right.
Good.
That's right, brother.
Yeah.
You won't pay for me, take my pain for me. Said I spilled this blood for you. Who need a hero?
Wakanda forever!